during the last event that we held on, focused particularly on the use of social media during the campaign period. And some of the things I had noted was that while those platforms were used extensively, there was a lot of attention and indeed strategy on divisive communication during the elections. That didn't quite bode well for us as a nation. It was quite divisive. There was a lot of attention on tribal issues and things that essentially could divide us in the nation. And part of what I also mentioned during the last event was that there seemed to be a lot of focus and desire across all the political parties for spokespersons who demonstrated ability to insult people the most. So it seemed like they looked out for people who had that special expertise to use insultive words, derogatory words, and the issues were not addressed as much during the election, during the campaign period, and it seemed more like an attack on individuals, personalities, instead of focusing on the issues and the challenges and the solutions of each of the candidates. And because of that approach, some social media platforms, of course, could not be used. I mentioned the absence of a lot of political activities on LinkedIn, for example, which is a professional networking site that would not entertain the type of language that political communication experts during the campaigns had used. And so that cut off about 7.9 million potential voters who are current Nigerian users of LinkedIn. They were not able to leverage a platform like LinkedIn to address issues, to talk to professionals who would likely be able to understand the issues and ask very intelligent questions. So I addressed all of this the last week. I think that definitely we could have done better. And as my senior colleague said during that last meeting, part of what we also realized was that I think apart from one political party, all the political party in essence did not even engage any registered strategic communication experts during their campaigns. And we could then see the result, because I'm sure that there is no professional that is registered with the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, for example, who would have advised and carried out communication activities in the manner that we saw during the campaign period. And of course, that has then taken us into the activities and the things that we've then heard after the elections on Saturday, and the things that we've heard from all the parties and indeed the electoral body as well. Very important in terms of things I noted after the elections and even during the elections, because of course I'm in Nigeria and I voted. What I noticed, for example, is that there was no coordinated attempt by INEC, for example, for incidents reporting. And so that created a lot of gap. Individuals were putting out information on social media, and it even looked like individuals were collating results outside of the electoral body that is saddled with that responsibility. And I think that that's because INEC itself created a vacuum, because there was no clear process for communication in terms of incidents during the elections, and even submitting information that could then be followed up by INEC itself. And then, of course, another thing that I also noticed was that there was a complete breakdown, really, of interagency collaboration. We saw a lot of show of force before the elections, but it didn't quite play out like that during the elections. What caused that gap? I think that especially for Lagos, which is where I stay and where I voted, I think that if there was sufficient information, if we really wanted to ensure that everybody told the path of justice, then we should indeed have ensured that there was a lot more collaboration between all the agencies of government during this election period. And then finally, at the Collation Center, I'm sure that all of us watched it. I think that the incidences and the issues that played out during the announcement of the presidential results at the Collation Center in Abuja could certainly have been handled better. The electoral process this year in 2020, there has been some improvements, especially with the use of technology, but it didn't quite play out as it was communicated. And that's one of the things that for me has been a critical pain. INEC communicated in terms of this is what technology we're going to use, and a lot of all the communication activities before the elections by INEC stressed on the use of technology to ensure that people trusted the process and to tell us that it was going to be a transparent one. But we saw at the collation center there was a complete departure from what we had been told before the elections, and then what they were then telling us during the announcement of the results. I think that managing that communication could have been better, and we would have seen a better process come out from it.
Thank you very much, Tolu. That was very incisive, very deep, very revealing. Talking about 7.9 million people shut out in campaigns, and they couldn't participate actively just because the political parties did not engage the social media properly. She pointed out also that there was no coordinated on the part of INEC. INEC did not do so well. No coordinated attempt by INEC for incident reporting. And this now gave room for individuals to take up that role, because there was a vacuum created by that failure. And then she noted the breakdown of intelligence agency collaboration and coordination, and then also giving individuals the liberty to be reporting things by themselves. Also the collation center issue, she mentioned that. So thank you, Tolu, for that. I will now call on the second speaker, leader of a professional body again, Professor Abdullahi Saleh. It's an honor to call him my friend and colleague, he is Professor Abdullahi Saleh Bashiru, the president of the ACCE Nigeria. He's a professor and the Dean, Faculty of Communication and Media Studies at the University of Abuja, Nigeria. I call on Bashiru to talk to us in 5 minutes, his perception of the campaigns and how the campaigns actually impacted the results that we saw last Saturday. Welcome on board, Professor Bashiru.
Thank you very much, Dr. Marcel. It's my honor to be in this forum. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. My perception, evidence-based perception of the campaign, first of all, I will note that the political parties typically have manifestos or plan of action which is designed and presented to Nigerians. We know, at least for the major political parties, we read them through various platforms, which is expected. And there was also the parties and the candidates both at the local and national level. They made use of media. They made use of the mass media, so as to get maybe free airtime, and a lot of their activities have been carried in the media. However, for the ones which the political parties themselves use, they use a lot of advertisement, commercials and jingles in the mass media, and also in the social media. We've also seen the use of music or musicians, as a medium, dance, actors, celebrities, celebrity endorsements. There are a lot of celebrities that endorse particular candidates or even wholesale political parties. Celebrities like Timi Dakolo, Portable, Kiss Daniel, P Squire, Dauda Kahuta Rarara, Tijani Gandu, Mr. Macaroni, group of Yoruba actors, Kannywood actors, etc., etc. We saw them, being used to relay messages. I'll come to the messages. I'm now talking of means through which such messages were said. And everywhere you go, you see a lot of posters and billboards, primarily sending message about identifying candidates, who the candidate is, what is the logo. Usually the posters and the billboards are just faces of the candidate. Then we also see politicians made use of visits and meetings. Some of the meetings even behind closed doors, as means of campaign. Then also the use of T-shirt, wrappers, face caps, and what have you, rallies, and what have you. But another important dimension to this campaign is the use of social media influencers. Large number of social influencers were recruited. It was reported some were paid very handsomely to either to support policies of the candidate or even to chew out dirt in the campaign or negative side of their rivals. And there were numerous real-time live streaming audio and video of the campaign rallies. But the social media has also been used for promoting a lot of false narratives against political opponents instead of relaying messages about what the political party or the candidates intend to do when they get elected. And it is also noticeable that there is absence of serious political debates, right from the presidential to the National Assembly election. So far, there were very few debates, and we had not had debate in which all the presidential candidates, for instance, were, there, and they were able to participate. The one that was organized by one of the television stations actually was boycotted or absented by some of the political aspirants. So what is the message? What messages are they putting in those campaigns? Most of even decided voters to change course. Most of them, they were just, trying to show people that this is the candidate that some of them are accusations and counter rallies campaigns. The result so far is very say that this campaign, this is the result because of the campaign, but because of personal issues, because of sectional issues like religion, regional issues, because of personal interest, and what have you. And there is high negative campaign than positive campaign, unfortunately. No campaign about what I can do. No, this person's policy is not okay. My own policy is okay. Rather, a personality. And mobilization is largely due to personal convictions. Voting patterns for some reflected some real life issues, not campaign issues. Maybe they have certain needs which they feel the candidate will meet. And there is also the issue of ethnic, regional, religious, or generational perception of the candidate or past parties. So people voted because they prefer certain ethnic group, certain generation, certain religion, and what have you. Then there's the issue of threats and inducement. Some people are living in an area where to vote for a particular candidate openly will seem risky. So it is safer to be with the group. Risky, whether physically or otherwise. Then there is the influence of opinion leaders. So these issues work more than actually what the politicians campaigned. It worked more than the campaign actually. The campaign, in my own position, because of the low quality, because of the non-concerned with issues, has little influence in the result, even though the result is contested. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Bashiru. That was also very incisive, very deep. It makes me proud to say that Professor Bashiru is actually on the board of Prime Business Africa, editorial board of Prime Business Africa. So that's the kind of things that you get from us. Part of the things he has actually, in his speech or in his presentation, tried to differ a little from our first speaker. He said parties had plans. They made plans for the election. They tried to engage a lot of social media engagement. And then he also, I don't know whether Consortium of communication experts that have organized this would agree with this, but he argued, that there was a lot of commercial campaign and spending both on traditional and social media. He also identified effective use of celebrity endorsements in this campaign, the campaign that led to this election. And he talked about rallies, well done. And on social media use, he talked about use of influencers that was seen so much in this campaign, presidential campaign, than we've ever had. But he observed the absence of serious political engagement by candidates and by way of debates. And then the messages coming from them, not actually issue-based. It's not about convincing voters to win election, but personal name-calling and a whole lot of issues, a lot of innuendos that are not good enough. The campaign has little connection with voting. That he argues that the result of the election, has nothing to do with the campaign, but religious issues, sentiments, and a whole lot of issues. Our fault lines played a whole lot of role in the outcomes of the election rather than the campaign issues. Voting pattern, he said, reflected real life issues than campaign issues. So people who voted did not actually vote because they believed in the campaigns, but because they were pandering to their ethnic, religious, and sentimental issues. So thank you, Professor Bashiru. I will now call on the third person. If you have questions, let's use the chat box. Drop your questions on the chat box. We'll still come to the of lead consultant, CEO of the Ladybird Limited, Mrs. Bumi Oke. We are coming back to our ladies here, and you can be sure that they always deliver. Mrs. Bumi Oke, it has been named alongside global brand leaders from Philips, Heineken, and Pepsi Company on the 2023 Garrity Awards jury. Welcome with me, Mrs. Bumi Oke, to talk to us about the presidential campaigns and the outcomes, how they relate.
All right, thank you very much. Can you hear me? Thank you.
Yes, we can.
Can you confirm you can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you very much for the introduction. Let me first correct the fact that I'm a past president of AAAN. And so my opinions here are my personal opinion as a professional and a past president. So let me get to the issues at hand. We talked about what are options of our campaign messages. And I'd like to take it from the advertising and marketing perspective, which has to do with brand building. So let's look at how the various policies say is that the polity still only got to know the top 4 or top 6, or because they were the ones given the prominence on live TV, social media, maybe it's budgets, because I'm sure by the time you go around, unless you had some personal interest in other parties, you find that those who had the most money were the ones that were dictating the tune, and therefore still remain top of mind and easily recognizable. The other part I'd like to say about messaging and medium is the fact that when working with the electoral bodies, I think that it is not professional to only know how logos are going to appear on the ballot paper at the day of ballots. It should be public information so that everybody can have a free and fair recognition of different political parties. We are supposed to political party looks like, and I think I know more about that in future, not leave only to the political parties to promote that awareness, because it was a surprise to some of us when we saw that for some parties, the way it was going to appear is different from the way it has been on their social media or their TV. Some were, their symbols and so on and so forth. So from a messaging perspective, I feel we should be working hand in hand as tools, as people that really want to give our electorate a good menu to choose from, so that they can actually choose candidates based on the understanding of ideologies and what different parties look like. But more importantly, you have to political parties look like on the ballot paper at the end of the day. And that, I think, was not as well communicated as it should be. So that's still pre-voting. The other thing I would say about messaging is that a lot of the political campaigns, for those who had I'll say financial muscle, they were able to use all the multimedia, TV, radio, and press. But a lot of the 18 political parties, I'm not sure up to 30% or 40% of them were able to use multimedia because they simply did not have the budget. And then the individuals were also left. A lot of the people representing their parties were left to sort of promote themselves. And we know that promotion must be done by professionals. So I think in future, we should get INEC to have a consortium of professional marketing communication professionals from AAAN and ARCON register that they have for offer for each political party to utilize their service professionally, so that we can give the polity the right dose of information that they need to make an informed choice. Just like when people need legal aid, I think you need advertising and marketing communication aid. So I think that should be something that should be considered in the future. But having said that, a lot of top of mind messages were clear among the top maybe 4 or 5 political parties. But one other thing I would say is that even before the messaging, many of the messages did not have what you say a clear manifesto of what what were their political differences. I don't think that was very clear. It was more of the individual brands that were being promoted rather than the ideologies of each political campaign. And I think going forward, that's something we need to really look into, that we shouldn't just have quantity, but quality. Having said that, I think many of them use what you call above the line, ATL, BTL, and through the line social media. So that was pre-election and pre-voting. To the post-voting situation. Now, we remember that during the after voting, the electorate and the general public were expecting communication as promised by the electoral board and as campaigned by the various leaders in the political campaign. Now, I think that we all know that communication crisis was not managed well, because one thing you do when you have communication gaps is you must talk. You must export the situation. And I don't think if professionals were given that job to do, they could have done a better job of it. And that is why we're having so much discussion around the post-election results as they were released, because it's like somebody being at a restaurant, they're holding them up to serve the menu, and you don't have explanation as to why the menu is being served so in piecemeal or it's taking endless time. That's the same thing that happened. You had a right to tell people why our results of the political dinner that we had all gone to vote, many of us went out to vote, was not related. So I think the post-campaign communication management could also be better. We all know that. But don't forget, we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves. I like the fact that Nigerians are, especially the electorates, are becoming very, very, what you call, they're getting more conservative, both online and offline, about their opinion. And I think that is good for a democracy. But what I think we need to do more is that we must have a situation where we do not allow silence, because communication is so critical to the stability of a nation, or to the stability of even homes, not to talk of a nation. And that is why we're having so many people who are a little bit confused, especially the electorate, about what way to go. But having had having announced action, I think it took a long time, but it's a direction. And I like the fact that we are in a democracy and people can challenge whatever direction is. But what I think is critical is to try and let people know that Negative communication will not solve anything. What we need to do is be focused, be clear about each and every message. And when we don't have clarity about the results we want, we should ask questions, right? And it does nothing to be unruly and destroy so many things that end up destroying the peace of any environment. So having said that, I think because of time, I would just like to, end by saying that I just feel that crisis management communication strategies should have been applied, which means talk, communicate about the election results. Even when you don't have all the right answers, you have to feed the electorate with it. And then we have to understand that the different media, when you're on TV, radio, press, social media, we have to understand that these medium, you have to engage it fully by having a story to tell. A situation where there was silence for 24 hours, it really did not pause. But as a brand in Nigeria, I don't think it helped our corporate brand. So I think I'll end there, because ultimately, ours is about building brands and building images. And I think at Hurt brand, we have let the global, they're actually a very professional group of people who can do the right thing. Thank you, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Bumi. That was also very insightful. You took barely 2 minutes more than, about 2 minutes more than very rewarding. By summary, Bumi talked about trying to agree with Professor Bashiru, the fact that there were negative communication messages. And that she talked about those who had money, dictating the tone, more like he who pays the piper dictates the tone. The messaging was not, the messages were not professional, although the electorates know already what to do. They are better educated right now, according to Bumi. She lamented the fact that the electorate only got to know, most of the electorate only got to know about the logos of political parties on election day. To her, that's not good enough on an important election like the presidential election the country had. He talked about those who had financial muscle, that they were able to use the multimedia much more than those who didn't have. And these were just about 4 political parties who were able to just make it. I think it's referring to the political parties that the top 4, that even according to the results, top of mind messaging, they were there, but they're not clear they were clear among the 4 political parties, but not with the remaining 14 others. No, it's more of individuals. Also speaks. He talks about noise of professionals in the campaign strategies and the campaign strategy execution. The campaign management could be better, she concludes. She feels that crisis management communication strategies should have been applied in the campaigns. That was a good one. Right now, I'm going to call on the next speaker, but you permit me to jump because one of the speakers will be running for something shortly. So I want to call, rather move to the next person to be a male. That was, but I'm calling on Margaret Obiageli Olele, who is the Chief Executive Officer and Executive Secretary of the American Business Council. She was the Corporate Affairs Director for Pfizer in West Africa, West, East, and Southern African markets, responsible for public affairs and communication engagements, and for 3 years led the access, key accounts, tenders, and institution business, in addition to the corporate affairs role. There are so many things in her bio here. I could go on, but because of time, permit me to call on Obiageli Olele, to speak to us in 5 minutes, her perception about the campaigns and the outcomes of the elections. Welcome, Obiageli Olele.
Kindly put on your microphone, ma. Please put on your
Can you unmute yourself, please? If she's not here, okay. Can you put your mic on? She's unmuted actually, but I think she's having something. Can another person hear her?
Her mic,
Professor Dandaura, can you hear her?
her mic is not connected at all. She didn't connect her mic.
I think so. Okay, when she was joining, she didn't connect her mic.
Yes.
Okay. While she's sorting out that little technical issue there, may I call on the representative of the president? Pardon? Is she on?
No, go ahead, sir.
Okay.
Okay,
fine.
Dr. Mama.
So may I call
Dr. Mamalu?
Yes, Ambassador.
Yes, sir.
We can
Let
hear.
us
Yeah.
let's try to manage the time by way of summarizing, just introduce them by their name, and then we'll leave their profile in the background, because some of these distinguished personalities, they are also known to the country. So if we can manage the time, because there will be a section for question and answer.
Thank you.
Now we have enough time to be able to take care of that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I call on Omokisli Abunene, FRPA, the MD and CEO of Beam Media Limited. You have the floor now for 5 minutes, please.
Professor Mbamalo, it's good we have the same chronology, because they have to be enabled to speak. By my list is Professor Shaw, so we'll have to search for Kingsley to enable him speak. So maybe you can share with me the order you want to proceed, since it's modified.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Maybe Kingsley is not here. Okay, we can call on
Professor Shaw is the
Osho, please.
list, yes.
If Professor Osho is here, I think we can allow him speak, since Kingsley is not ready. But in my list here, Kingsley comes before them.
Okay.
Hello? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir. Just release your camera too, if you can, sir.
Yes, we can hear you, Prof.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, Professor Lai Osho.
Okay. I want to thank
We
you
can
very
hear
much.
you, sir.
I want to thank you very much for the
Yes,
invitation.
Prof. We can hear you, Professor Lai.
I started speaking. Can you hear me?
Please go ahead, Professor Shaw. You have switched off your microphone, Professor Shaw, in the process of putting off the camera. Kindly put it on and share your perspective. We can hear you. Just go ahead, sir.
Okay. Now, I want to say that the campaign was driven by 4 main factors. One, the social media. 2, the youth population, especially those that were, I want to use the word, that were fired by the EndSARS protests. Then, of course, the 2 old factors that have always influenced Nigerian politics and election: ethnicity and religion. So these 4 factors were quite prominent during the campaign. the youth were fully engaged on the social media. And I want to believe that actually the social media, more or less gave the kick to the campaign. And the political parties were more or less reacting to the conversations and the exchanges that were quite prominent on the social media. So we have to recognize this important fact, which to me is a significant aspect of the 2023 election campaign. And the role of religion and ethnicity, brought out clearly the fault lines, the polarization in Nigerian politics. And these were quite, evident in the narratives of the campaign by the parties, by the individuals, and even the social media. So in a way, the youth behaved, as we have had, like the historical thing. Well, many people will argue that, this election was fundamentally different from what we had in the past. But if you look at if you read the literature of Nigerian politics since the 60s, it has always been this three-legged issue: the North, the Southwest, and the Southeast. And we have that, quite clearly in this election. There was a lot of, divisive rhetorics, abusive exchanges, particularly by the youth on the social media. There were attempts to, even shout down some other, opposing views. So the media space was quite toxic during the campaign. That added a lot to the negative things that we can notice in the campaign. The campaign was actually more or less hijacked from the political parties. Now, in terms of the professional involvement of, those we can call professional communication experts, yes, they were there, but they couldn't operate according to the ethics of their professions. They were operating according to the dictates of the political parties. And that is something that I noticed. Two, the mainstream media did not help. There were a lot of sensational things, sensational narratives, stories. They didn't really give us the substance, the issues in the campaign. And one can notice that on television, there was what I would call a culture of celebrity. Many of the interview anchors, program anchors were behaving like celebrities. They were not really at home with the issue of the campaign. So that was a major observation for me, in terms of the mainstream media. The regional interests, ethnic interests, and things like that. So to me, there has been no difference in the campaign rhetorics, the campaign narratives, either by the parties or the media, from what we have had in the past. So we have not moved too far away from our experience of the past. Then, of course, after what has been the effect after the election, the result. I believe that the result we had, is in line with the kind of campaign that we had. If you look at the voting pattern, you find a clear demarcation along ethnic and religious line in the voting pattern. That is very, very clear from what I've seen. Then, of course, for post-election, I think the last speaker, is it Mrs. Bumioki, mentioned a very, very fundamental point, which I've noticed. The negative narratives about this country. We tend to emphasize everything wrong, every negative thing, even small things, we magnify it to the extent that we have delegitimized all our institutions and we are demarketing the whole country. This, I don't think, will help anybody. We need to look at, there are certain positive things in the campaign. The use of the BVAS machine, for instance, was quite novel. There must have been some technical issues, but does that mean that we should condemn everything? So I think as professional communicators, we should start thinking about, some of these things, that the negativity is just getting too much. It's like there's nothing working in Nigeria. And I don't think so. So we need to be a little bit more careful the way we craft our narratives about issues and events in Nigeria, about the divisions among our elite. What we have seen is a kind of lack of consensus among the Nigerian ruling class. I want to thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Professor Layosho, for that decisive one, talking about how the youth population fired the campaigns, of course, triggered by the NSAS experience and the media. He also indicted the media, which was actually very toxic. Permit me now to call, I'm sure Margaret Olele is now back. I'll call on her to take the floor. 5 minutes. If you could make it 4, fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I may make it 3 so that everyone would have their piece. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can. We can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, I'm going to be looking at things from the point of view of how the political parties engaged the foreign stakeholders, as well as the corporate organizations. I would want to say that this election saw every major political candidate trying to either have a meeting at the Chatham House or engaging at the U.S. Chamber. So the bit about engaging Nigerians in the diaspora, as well as the foreign governments, were very critical in this election. And for my organization, for instance, the American Business Council, we had the 4 vice presidential candidates from APC, PDP, the NNDP, as well as the LP, and the U.S. Consul General's residence with U.S. companies, corporate entities, and some stakeholders really shared exactly what they want to do for the country or their priority areas. And contrary to what I've heard, I noticed that they had clear messaging, which were not different from one, especially the 3 major political parties at that time, and each of them talked about the need to remove the subsidy, to ensure that we had challenges around the foreign exchange was resolved, and the bit about private sector providing an enabling environment for the private sector. So these conversations happened at the Nigerian Summit group platforms, American Business Council, like I said, my organization. It happened, at the Chatham House. It happened at the U.S. Chamber, and so there was a very deliberate effort to engage the foreign stakeholders, and you'd see that in some of the adverts. I noticed that some of the adverts, especially before the election, had pictures of certain candidates, with ambassadors of some countries and some of the stakeholders, just to see where in terms of international alignment, we're very much there. So overall, I would say that the way INEC, a lot of the speakers have talked about the way INEC communicated. I would say that the publicity director of INEC showed very little expertise in terms of what he had. I wish he was on the score, because there was a time they asked him about the technical issues, and he went on and on about saying that he was not educated in the technical space and he didn't have enough competence to answer those questions. I would expect that someone at those levels would have some talking points that, even though he's not an expert, is able to share certain high level thoughts, and then maybe bring in more details into what they're saying. Overall, I would just say that just a few minutes ago, or I would say about 30-40 minutes ago, I had a podcast with about 3 of the civil society groups, and that's CTT, Enough is Enough, and a couple of one other. And one of them were unanimous with the fact that INEC could have done better in the area of communication, and that there was an over-promising and an under-delivery. Also, looking at in terms of how they were, the civic society groups were really the people who were communicating and letting us know what was really going on, and still letting us know what was going on. So overall, I would say that in terms of messaging, the candidates, the major political candidates were very clear on some of the things they were doing or what they are going to be doing. And even in terms of, apart from the 3 points, they also focused on our culture and promised that we're going to do X, Y, Z. But on the whole, I think INEC would have done better, in terms of communicating to the citizens and to ensure citizens' confidence in the outcomes of the election. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Margaret Olele, for that decisive one. One of the takeaways from there is the indictment of INEC for not doing well enough in sensitizing the people prior to the election. I will now call on Kingsley, we've called him before, to take the floor to speak for 5 minutes. Kingsley, please. Is he here now? He's not.
No,
He's not. We can jump again.
This is okay.
Kingsley, are you there?
No, but Bumi has connected now. Have we taken her? Kingsley is not in the house.
Bumi, okay. Bumi has spoken. Here in my list, okay. Who is Chido Wakama. Chido Wakama, the president of the...
Yes, it's in the house.
Okay, please, Chido, take over the floor and speak for 5 minutes, please.
Chido, please.
Kindly unmute yourself. Kindly unmute yourself. Not here. I can't even find him.
He's here.
Chido, could you unmute yourself, please? Yes, I can find him now.
I'm unmuted.
Okay, please go ahead.
And your camera, sir.
Yeah, I don't. What has happened?
You can go ahead if the camera is giving you issues.
Chido, you are muted. You are muted again, please. Unmute yourself. I think, yes.
The story of the Nigerian 20.
You are muted again. You are muted. You are muted.
Maybe
you
allow him, Dr. Mbamalu, because there's delay. So when you say unmuted, he hears you differently. Yes, you can go ahead now.
Okay. Okay. He's on mute.
Just go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The story of the Nigeria 2023 elections, from my view.
No one hears you.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
The story of the 2023 elections so far has centered on 4 issues. 1, disappointment from beavers and server errors. 2, government engineered financial constraints on mobility. High citizen enthusiasm, but low voter violence and disenfranchisement, growing citizen distrust as a result of that, the 3 things above, and then heavy communication. There was significant communication. But what form did it take? The build up to the election was impressive. Political communication was focused and high decibel. Communication is a critical feature of politics in the modern age, and in this election, political communication played a major role. Political communication, of course, is the art of engineering consent and influencing choice among the electorate. The political parties gave it a good run. The laggard in political communication was the umpire, INEC, in failing to spell out the ground rules clearly. The 4 leading parties deployed all the elements of political communication. To read, some of those elements are relationship management, persuasion, reputation management, opposition research, environmental research, positioning and segmentation, as well as of interest is how they handled relationship management, positioning and segmentation, as well as persuasion. They also played in opposition research. APC, PDP, and LP, most importantly, had discernible positioning. APC was the party of continuity and Emilokon. PDP positioned as the one with experience and better results. LP was clear about its demographics and psychographics. Nigeria needs a fundamental reset to make it work for its youth and others. That was their message. Reputation management was a core challenge for all the parties. APC's Bola Ahmed Tinubu had the most difficult challenge, managing the many reputational issues around him. Next in the reputation challenge battle was Atiku Abubakar. LP's Peter Obi also had to manage reputational issues, being, in his case, challenges of the nice guy positioning by opponents. They didn't accept it, they were challenging it. Media and messaging. To their credit, the political parties explored all available media platforms. Broadcasting with its audiovisual capability played a dominant role. So too, social media of WhatsApp, Facebook, Telegram, Instagram, and videos, YouTube videos, Google videos, a lot of videos. Radio was a dominant vehicle for carrying the messages of the principal contestants. Radio was the main place where their adverts and jingles played up. And then there was the matter of polling. There were a lot of polls, and up to 5 polls, and different interpretations. At the end of the day, only one poll has proven correct, the one by Steers that gave scenarios. What will happen if there is a low turnout? What will happen if there is a high turnout and all that? For us in the communication business, communication played a major role, but was it the dominant, was it the decider of the outcome of this election? The way it has panned out, it's difficult to tell now whether the expenditure by APC, outspending all the others, accounted for its victory. It's difficult to say whether the clear positioning by the Labour Party accounted for its significant major run, or even its claim and belief by its obedience that they won the election. The INEC, therefore, has left us in a quandary, in a situation where it's difficult to say, did we achieve what we set out to achieve as communicators. All the communicators that ran for the various parties, it's now so difficult to say what happened, to isolate the role of communication in this entire process. Sad indeed, because we would have been able to isolate communication and say, let's look at what role it played and how well it played it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. You kept the time, just about the time we are trying to warn that you exhausted the time, you stopped. Thank you, Chido Makama. That was, as usual, that was great. Chido identified 4 things that were main issues in this election: beavers and server errors, government engineer financial crunch, disenfranchisement, and communication issue. These are the 4 things he recorded here as the main issues in the election. Now I call on Kingsley Abuneme to take the floor. 5 minutes, Kingsley.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? Please confirm.
Good evening. Good evening. We can hear you. Okay. Welcome.
All right. I'm standing in for the OAN president, and he sent his thoughts. So, from the out-of-home advertising point of view, we looked at a couple of things here. Usually we have pressures in out-of-home about this type of pressure, and it really was the case as always. Now, from state governments, from the politicians, from their party supporters and all, because our communication from outdoor, usually we always say less, more, and like every other communication platform, it does not take much. So, for instance, the face of a contestant and the party logo is good enough, but a couple of issues will always come up in this regard. And what are these issues? Where some of these state governments, where you have some parties have some state governors and they are entrenched there, they do their best to block opposition from coming in. So, for instance, we have some of the presidential candidates, even if they could afford it, we're not given access to the big, bold and audacious billboards. So this forces them and maybe their followers to fly under the radar. So what you now get, you get indiscriminate posting of posters, banners and things like that here and there. So, and because of things like this, we have brands staying away. Brands stay away. They don't want to do anything about outdoor advertising at such time, especially because of the clutter. And when we look at what they achieved in their communication messages, it's basically simple, because most of them, try to achieve audience reach, recognition, reinforcing their advertising messages, call to action, negative campaign, which we noticed as well, nothing to be proud of, but most of them took to negative campaigns to get at, their opponents and all of that. And in some cases, this backfired too. And we saw all of that, and most of their ads, most of their messages would ordinarily have gone through ARCON, where these messages will be properly vetted and, to ensure that they conform with the ARCON code. But from what we see, just about 30% of outdoor advertising users for this 2023 election, probably went through ARCON. Some of them will give reasons about time and all of that, and some others, in some cases, it's common knowledge that picture of their preferred candidate, attach it with that of the presidential candidate or whoever, they go about posting them indiscriminately, and that's, became another problem, So for all in all, what we can really say, because like I said earlier, outdoor advertising, no matter how little you put on outdoor billboard, if you do it right, it will always connect with the audience. But something else that we see, talking about the election, more, is about institutional failures. That's what we basically saw, especially when you looked at INEC rolling out their guidelines, and which gave most Nigerians confidence and hope that yes, this is a system they could trust and all of that, only to find out that in the end they didn't follow it, and this really was bad for most Nigerians. And we can see another point here, that it just might not stop there, because for all we see, it erodes the confidence the average Nigerian has in the system, because INEC as an institution has more or less failed Nigerians. At least that is the perception out there right now. And before you know what, from tribunals, we move to the court, and we all know the perception of Nigerians, of Nigerian courts and all of that, And whether you like it or not, most people now see it as that circle, that circle that we've been trying to cut away from, And but something comforting that we must say here is the fact that the new entrants, challenged status quo, and they were able to to push the old players to up their game in such a way that.
Can we be rounding off now, please? Speaker?
Yes,
should be rounding off.
Yes, I'll do that. So they now force most of the old players to discuss issues rather than political campaign being ending up as jamborees and all of that. Let me rest this for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You took 2 minutes extra, but that was great. Take away from here, brands stayed away from outdoor advertising, a whole lot of issues. By the time we are going to the next stage, we're going to get to the next stage, the regulators, they should be able to answer some of these issues, because Kingsley talked about toxic messages on the billboards, on the outdoor advertising facilities, and then that a whole 30%, only 30% of the outdoor advertisers actually pass through APCON, So that brings us now to the regulators. We're calling on Adeniyi to speak. Adeniyi is actually Adeniyi is the Deputy Controller General of Customs. Is currently the Nigerian as president of the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, and current commandant of the Nigerian Customs Law, Mr. Adeniyi.
Well, thank you very much. Good evening, all. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, please.
Okay, let me start by extending appreciation of the Institute to the convener. This is the third in the series, and I am sure from what I'm seeing, it can only get better. Well, let me talk first from the constituency of customs, because I listened to the first speaker who talked about the fact that there was so much violence, there was security breaches. The customs second election duty, election assignments. I do know that about 11 other security agencies similarly seconded officers, and they were all asked to report each state where they were supposed to serve. So quite unlike what I saw in other elections, I would say that there was better synergy between agencies of government that were involved in providing security for this. And from what we saw on election day, at the risk of sounding immodest, I would say relatively, if you compare this to 2011, 2015, and 2019 election, this election was peaceful. Of course, there were pockets of violence, skirmishes, disturbances here and there. But in terms of, if you compare them, I would say we got a better result in terms of having a peaceful and conclusive election. A lot has been said about the campaigns, and I just would not want to repeat what has been said earlier. But for me, we are all in agreement that there was some absence of alignments between words, meanings, emotions in our messages. And so this is why it is very, very difficult for us to conclude that the messages in the campaign are translated to votes or translated to voters' decision. So because of the result that we saw from the election itself. In terms of the use of technology, well, it promised very, very big. I voted in worked in my polling unit, 14. Accreditation was done within 10 seconds in that center. We got the results and we cross-checked the results in INEC portal. There was a tally. The result was not immediately transparent. So what I'm saying was that the Beavers has a lot of promise, and I believe that it has a great future. Even if it is not working for us now, it holds a very good promise of working in the future. So it's not something that I think we should just sweep away. The campaigns were bereft of big issues. They were not issue-based. So we didn't have any big idea that provided the rallying points for any of the parties. I must single out LP because when you hear themes like from consumption to production, that resonates with Nigeria at this stage of our development. So I must give it to the fact that LP provided us something refreshingly different from the rest. I didn't do much of social media during there was so much noise. The messages were not very clear. The messages were hijacked by people that have different interests. So we all know the absence of gatekeeping in social media that created so much problem. So when political actors, the candidates, when they go out and they make campaign promises, people get to social media, you find caricature of all those messages and things like that. So it wasn't really of good help. Unfortunately, the mainstream media wasn't better in any way because of the issue of ownership and control, which one speaker has spoken to earlier. So Nigerians, depending on what you are looking out for, to know which of the media to go. And even the debate that would have enhanced the process was merged in some kind of controversies throughout. So eventually 2-3 weeks before the elections, the signature programs that we hear on and we watch on major TV stations became boring because there were no refreshing issues. It's just about bashing the candidates of each other. And the spokespersons for each of these big political parties were not communicators. They were politicians. And that was one of the major disappointments that we have in this process. Finally, I talk about the demographics, which I believe played a very big role in these elections. We have primarily a very big youth population, which showed so much enthusiasm. But unfortunately, the turnout eventually was very, very low. Even in places where the youth determined the party that won, the turnout was very low. So we have an election, a major election that elicited so much interest and so much enthusiasm, and the total number of voters was under 25 million. So you see people who make so much noise on social media. You know, you have discussions with them in parlors, and to summarize, what INEC promised Nigerians, they did not completely deliver on them, but it is not as bad as what we used to have in terms of security, in terms of the use of technology, and of course, communications could be better because there is no proof, like somebody said, that we can have an alignment between the messages that are contained in the communication and the final decisions of the voters. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Denny. Summary talked about the ownership and control issue in the traditional media and how it has not helped others. He also agreed with the former speakers, those that spoke earlier, that the social media wasn't effectively used. It was negative, toxic, and the rest. So I'll call